When you open ACDSee Photo Studio, you will see this. Basically, you can decide what folder you want ACDSee to open at startup, and you can either decide to show this every time you open it or not. And also you could decide if you want ACDSee to open in the last folder you viewed. So we're not going to spend too much time here. I'm always opening my Photo Studio in Pictures, the Pictures folder on my PC. So when you click Next, you are prompted with the database options. So what the database is basically where ACDSee houses the information like thumbnails, categories, notes, keywords, ratings, everything that is related to the metadata of your photos. And you can select which folders you want ACDSee to keep track of just by doing that. And you can select hard drives, your main hard drive in your computer, and you can also select external hard drives if that is what you also want to do. You can also select when you want to be reminded to back up your database, but we will probably analyze all what you can do with the database in other workshops, because we're going to try to make it as simple as possible for people to use ACDSee, manage their photos, and edit quickly. Automatically, when you open Ultimate, you will be in Manage mode. And Manage mode is where you can access and organize and catalog your files. So on my left, I do have my folders, catalogs, and calendar pane. And in folders, I have basically the structure of the file structure in my computer, right? So if I double click on pictures, here are all the images that I have stored in my computer. And if you're opening ACDSee Ultimate or ACDSee 2024 for the first time, you will see that on the bottom left, ACDSee will start loading thumbnails for your photos, and will also start adding keywords to your photos. Because that is a new feature in 2024, the AI keywords, which basically adds information, keywords, by analyzing your photos. So for example, if I have a photo of a cat right here, and I go to the Organize tab on the bottom, I can see that the keywords of animal, mammal, cat, and also food and drink, because we have a little glass here, is being suggested for this photo. So the most basic way that you can use Manage mode is through the AI keywords capabilities. And how do you do that? If you go to Catalog, and after Ultimate has been able to analyze all of the photos in your database, then it'll start through the catalog pane showing you all of the images that have that keyword in it. So again, once you open Manage mode, you will be in folders. But if you go to Catalog, and we're gonna overview everything, but we're gonna start first with AI keywords, because it's such a cool way to discover everything you have in your database, and a really good way to start looking for what you might be interested in working on. So here are some examples of how AI keywords work. If I go to nature, for example, and body of water, I can see all the images in my database that ACDSee considers to have a body of water. So what else can you do in Manage mode? Well, you can add different sort of metadata into your photos. For example, right here on the properties, pane on your right, I could add ratings from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say you're analyzing like a wedding photography shoot you have, and you want to add certain ratings to photos you think are better than others. And actually, I have photos of my own wedding. So why don't I open those? So I could go through all my photos and start adding ratings and or color labels. So I don't know, let's consider this photo to be a 3 in quality and this one to be a 1. Then after if I wanted to add ratings to all the photos of my wedding, I can go back to catalog and just choose to see the photos that have a 1 in rating or 3 in rating in this case. Okay? If you want to go back, just go to this bar here and select the folder you were in at before to be able to see all the rest of your images. What else do we have in manage mode? Well, quick search is also a very easy way to search for photos. So for example, if I go back to my main pictures folder and I type, let's say, cheetah, I can find all of the photos that have the AI keyword cheetah attached to them. If I type person, I can see all of the photos that have people in them. If I type mountain, the same. So what an incredible way to actually sort through the photos you have and organize the way you want to see your photos and eventually how you want to edit them. So what is the top menu we have here? As you can see, many options, but let's go one by one. So you can, of course, import images from removable drives from any device, a scanner, discs, or even CDs and DVDs. So if I wanted to import photos from an SD card or a USB drive into my database, all I have to do is select the folder and drive, and then I'll be prompted with the ACDSee import, and I can view my images by file types or by date. And so if you wanted to import, all you have to do is choose the destination of where you want your photos to go to, and you can even rename the images all automatically, right? You can also apply metadata to those images you're importing, but we're not going to go over that for now. Another cool thing that you can do on manage mode is batch rename. And so our following menu option is this one, batch, where you can batch export photos in specific file formats. You can batch develop photos, batch edit photos, or even rename, resize, and all of that sweet stuff. So let's say I wanted to have all of my wedding photos have the wedding title in them, and I wanted to rename them all automatically. All I have to do is go up here, or I can also right-click, go to batch, rename file, and right here, I will have the rename options. So these guys, the hashtags, will become numbers in your photos. So if I change this to wedding, you can see that the current name of the files, that's the current name of the files, but then the new name will have wedding, and then the hashtags will be converted into numbers. And you can decide to have less hashtags. And if you have less than 100 photos, you only need 2. So this is a really cool way to rename your photos if you have a massive catalog of photos that you want. So I hit start, and that's it. Now I have all of my photos tagged as wedding 1 to wedding 24. And if I go to catalog, and let's say I'm in mountain again, but I want to look at my wedding photos, I just type in wedding, and they appear right there. Okay, so I'm just going to look at some questions. If you search for all photos having mountains, can you then export all those photos to folder, printer? Yep, totally. So just like that, if I look mountain and I select all these photos, I can right click and click on batch export. And this way I can choose a specific folder where I want my images to be. I could create a new subfolder inside the folder they are currently. Again, I can batch rename, and I can change the format of my images. So if I have a bunch of raw photos and want to transform them into JPEG, this would be a really good way to do it. So that is a very basic overview of manage mode. And just so we are able to cover all of the modes, we're going to keep going. But one of the awesome things about ACDSee, of course, is the capability to edit raw photos non-destructively. And this is why, for this workshop, we're just going to do all of our edits in raw photos. Okay, so what is media mode? Media mode is basically, it's a database-driven mode for viewing and accessing the media you have either browsed in manage mode or that you have cataloged in the ACDSee database. So it's a really nice way to sort the images in your database by the date they were taken, by the ratings, by the file name, of course, and you can group them also in different categories. So if you were interested in looking at the photos taken with a specific camera, then this would be a really kind of a different way to view it. You can also do this on manage mode, but media mode is more of a thumbnail focused way to access this information. So what is view mode? Let's select a couple of photos and go over to view mode. View mode is basically designed to examine your images with this film strip view. And you can examine images, documents, even PDFs using view mode. You can also do some adjustments to your images that are automatic and that you can access on this menu on top of the film strip. So you can rotate your images left and right. You can use the zoom tool. And for example, you can do the auto light EQ, which will automatically apply some adjustments to your photos. But maybe what would be of most interest to us would be the ability to add face information to your photos. So I'm just going to go back to media mode, and I'm going to select a bunch of photos from my wedding. After selecting those, I'm going to go to view mode. And this is what I was telling you before, which is the capability of adding face information to the people in your photos. So ACDSee will ask me, we'll start recognizing people in these photos and we'll ask if I want to add that information to this photo's metadata. So I'm gonna go ahead and click yes. And now that information is added. If I wanted to add another name, all I have to do is just type it on the box and click enter. So now, as you can see, I have face metadata incorporated into my images, and I can either approve or cancel the ACDSee suggestion. This is me right here, so I'm just going to type my name. And now ACDSee, as you can see, starts recognizing that this might be the same person. And I'll just click on OK. So that's a pretty basic overview of Manage Mode, Media Mode, and View Mode. But to try to explain how, for example, my workflow is using ACDSee, I'll show you how I work using Manage Mode, Develop Mode, and Edit Mode, which we'll dive into just now. Develop Mode. Develop Mode is my favorite mode in ACDSee because you can achieve so many incredible results. And it's just the fact that, and we'll explain what this is, but ACDSee works non-destructively, meaning that all of the edits that I apply in my photos, they're not permanent. And I can go back and I don't have to save as and like do all of that somewhat a bit of an annoying workflow. I can do all the edits I want on a photo and just keep working. And if I wanted to undo all of those changes, it's very easy to do. And I'll just show you in a second. So let's fix a photo in develop mode. I'm just going to select this one right here, and I'll open it up in develop mode. And so develop mode, as I was saying, is where you can edit raw and other images non-destructively. And it's a really cool way to start exploring photo editing. So let's just make some basic adjustments. We're not going to go into the masking just now. We're just going to create a little bit more of a more striking photo just by maybe increasing, for example, contrast. Maybe reduce the exposure slightly to make it a little moody. And just like that, if I go to the bottom, I can click Show Original, and I can see the edit I've done. So really, a lot can be accomplished in photo editing just with the General tab on your Develop tools, but you have many others like white balance. If we wanted to make the photo look colder, we just drag the temperature towards our blues, or if we wanted to enhance this sort of sunset feeling, we can move it to the right. We also have light EQ, which allows us to fine-tune shadows. So if I wanted to make my shadows darker, I just drag this to the left. If I wanted to make my midtones darker or brighter, you just move them left or right. And so, just so that we can keep going, we won't go over all of the options we have right here. But just to finish the overview of develop mode, to the right, we can see the histogram of our image, where we can see the RGB information of our photo, and we can apply certain presets. For example, the film preset, which gives this orangey look, which could be cool if that's what you're looking for. And on the bottom, you have the history of your edits. And in the history, you can undo certain edits or undo them all. So remember, all of the adjustments that you're doing are non-destructive. So that's my original, that's my edit, and if I simply just go back to manage mode, you will see that the changes have been applied. But if I choose the image and go back to develop mode, all I have to do is click this button right here that says reset to defaults, and my image will be completely back to normal. If I hit Ctrl+C, I'll have my edits again, and if I wanted to save it as a new image, all I have to do is click Save, Save As, and then ACDSee will ask me where I want my photo. And you can choose, of course, different file formats. So again, by clicking Reset to Default button, we're undoing all of the changes we did really fast. So let's keep exploring develop mode a little bit more. When you open a photo in develop mode, you will see the masking options, which are only available in ACDSee 2024, Professional 2024, and Ultimate 2024. And the awesome thing about these selections is that you can fine-tune different aspects of your photo so much more precisely and so much faster thanks to these automatic selections. So if in this photo I wanted my subject to pop a little bit more, and I can also see, the background here it looks really nice, but maybe we could have a slightly less exposure, whatever. We can start by selecting our subject. And you will see a red mask on your selection. And the selection right off the bat is really good, right? But if I zoom in a little bit here, also the zoom information is right here on the bottom. I can see that part of the scarf is not selected because it's not red. And all I have to do to select that is brush on it with my left click. So every time you have a selection, then you are going to be able to change or modify that selection with a brush tool that is open immediately after. I'm just going to undo that. And now that we have our subject selected, let's make it pop more from the background. I'm going to hide my mask just so that I can see what edits I'll be doing. And I'm going to increase the contrast. And this will only affect our selection, of course. And there you can see I've gone pretty intensely, contrast all the way to the right. But as you can see, we're only editing our subject. So I'm going to increase contrast a little bit more, not too much. Another thing I want to really emphasize is that small adjustments have big impact. So if I only increase my contrast, let's say to 15, increase my exposure just to add a touch more brightness to 13, and I look back at my image, maybe we'll add a little bit more contrast. You can see that immediately our subject is more prominent with those ever so slightly details applied only to my subject. I can also increase the clarity slider, which adds a bit more sort of texture and detail to my selection. And what if I wanted to now edit the background? Well, all I have to do is just add a new mask. In this case, the AI select background. And as you can see, my selection incorporates everything but my subject. Now, just as we saw before, the scarf has some selection. And so to remove from my selection, all I have to do is right click and brush. So whenever I right click and brush, I'm deselecting. Whenever I left click and brush, I'm selecting. Now that we have our background selected, I'm going to hide my mask and reduce the exposure just a little bit. And so now I have my two masks and my two adjustments to my masks, and I can see how the photo was before and how it's after. Before, after. So that's a pretty basic edit that you can do in develop mode. And again, I can just go back to manage mode and all of what I did will be automatically saved. I don't need to bother to save. I can just keep going and keep editing my photos. Yeah, so Norm is saying instead of dragging the slider left or right, you can use the up and down arrow keys. That's totally true. So if I go up with my keyboard, I'm also affecting the sliders. I like to drag the sliders left and right because I can see more quickly what I'm doing. And I usually tend to go very extreme and then make my way back. Make my way back until I like what I see. Let's do, and again, right? So if I bring back that image into develop mode and I don't like what I did, all I have to do is just click reset to default and my image goes back to what it was. So all of the edits are stored, but they are not permanent on your images. Let's try some other things in develop mode. So I got this really cool view and I'm just going to try to make it a little bit more or a lot more dramatic. And I'm not going to use too many tools here, but what I'm going to use is basically probably some of the most important things you can do to really edit your photos to the next level. And it's not hard to do, which is the most awesome thing. So right off the bat, I can see that my sky here is a little pretty bright. So I'm just going to try to reduce the exposure in the general tab in develop mode so that I can bring more information to my image. And if I drag it fully to the left, it's a little bit too much and I don't really like what starts happening to my photo there. So I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit like that. It doesn't really bother me that this is a little overblown. I think that's okay. So if I click on show original, I can see what I did before. And this is with just the reduction of the exposure. So all I've done now is reduce the exposure. And I wanted to bring the shadows even more dark. So to do that, all I have to do is click on Light EQ. And I'm going to select just the basic mode of Light EQ, which affects your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights. So if I bring my shadows down quite a lot, now my image starts looking very kind of intense, right? A little bit more eerie. So this is our original photo. This is what our edit is starting to look like. So I brought the shadows down, but I still want to have a really strong area of color right here where the trees are. So if I go to masking on develop mode and I hit brush, I can start painting on areas that, of course, I want to edit, right? And one of the cool things about the brush tool in develop mode is it has this pressure slider here. So pressure, think about it, yeah, like the pressure I'm adding on the brush, so sort of like an opacity. If I bring the pressure really low, then my red color is very faint. So the edit that I apply will also be faint. If I increase my pressure to the maximum, then you can see that the red is a lot stronger, right? So again, small edits will have a big impact. So I'm going to bring the pressure to 40, reduce the size of my brush with my mouse, and not perfectly, just like this, on this area where the light is hitting. Okay? So a very easy selection using the brush. And I will increase the exposure only where my brush is. And if I go fully extreme, of course, it'll be very obvious what I'm doing, but we don't want to be extreme. We just want to be subtle. And so I'm increasing the exposure only in that area to 70. And now we've transformed a pretty cool photo into a lot more of an eerie sort of moody photo by choosing masks and by applying basic edits with light EQ and exposure in the general tab, and again with masking. Before, after. So another common thing to do, resizing and cropping, of course. So we've only worked with the Tune tab in develop mode, but if I go to geometry, you can see that I will look at my photo with this grid, and the crop options are right here, and you can decide to constrain the proportions or just to freely sort of select how you want to crop your photo. So I'm just going to make this more panoramic, like that. And that's it. I'll click done. And now I can see in view mode, by selecting it in manage mode, my edit, right? Again, if I open this image back in develop mode, I can click on reset to defaults and everything will be reverted. So now we're going to edit a photo and hopefully bring it into edit mode. So I've already done this, and I'm actually going to delete this one so that we can do it all over again. So I'm opening my photo in develop mode. And immediately I can see some sort of problems in the photo. It's a little bit overexposed, which is a very common problem in many people's photos. And it's all a little bit green, right? So let's start diving in. I'm going to open my general tab and start by decreasing the exposure of the entire image. Now I can see more information in my background popping up. I can increase some clarity to add a little bit more of a texture to my image. And I'm going to decrease my shadows just to give the entire image a bit more contrast. Remember, you can always look at what you were editing. And I think maybe we went a bit too far with the exposure. So let's bring the exposure back up a little, but decrease the highlights with the highlight slider. This will reduce contrast in our image, but we can add it back just a tiny bit more there. So this is our image before and our image after. So how do I correct this kind of greenish color that I can see? Well, something cool that you can try. Let's start with more of the basic, okay? So if I change my temperature slider, I will make my image colder by being bluer or warmer by making it more yellow. But the tint, as you can see, is slightly dragged to the left, making it my image generally green. So if I just drag it slightly to the right, then I'm counteracting that greenish look that my original photo had. If you want to be very specific about your white balance, as soon as you open this tab, you can click on any area that you consider to be white. And the whole temperature of your photo will change. So just to be extreme, I'm just going to choose this, and it's all, of course, kind of screwed up. But if I choose on the shirt right here, it should give me a more precise and exact white balance value. So can you turn off and on individual changes within develop mode? Yes, just by clicking here. I'm either activating or disactivating the edits that I've been applying. Another cool trick that you might like to know, if you open the color EQ, you can select certain colors and drag them up or down to increase their strength and saturation. So if I wanted to get rid of all the greens, all I have to do is select somewhere in my photo and drag down. And you can see that that selection made these sliders move automatically. So I'm just going to add a bit more contrast to my image. And now we're going to transition into edit mode. Okay, so after developing my image, if I want to keep going and work on other options, I can, of course, open edit mode. This will bring my image with all of the edits that I've already applied into edit mode. And what is edit mode? Edit mode has more than 200 pixel-based adjustment tools that you can use in combination with selections, brushes, gradients, and it's also a non-destructive layered-based photo editing. So as you can see on the right, I have this layers pane right here, and we'll look at that in just a second, and we'll also look into the AI actions in just a second. But for now, one of the cool options of edit mode is the face edit. So after opening my photo in edit mode, I go over to face edit, and I can start tweaking different aspects of my photo. But more than tweaking the size of the eyes and things like that, which you can, of course, do, you can increase the face width or reduce it. We're not going to do any of that. But what's really helpful, especially when you're taking photos of portrait photos of family members or whatever, is sometimes we want to smooth out certain textures on our skin. And so the skin tab is really good for that. I'm just going to add a little bit of smoothness to the skin. and just a little bit of glow to make it pop more. So that's how it looks before and how it looks after. And maybe that's a little too much. We'll just reduce that, but you have the option. So there you go. And now, if I wanted to, for example, go back to manage mode, I'll click on manage and I'll save as this image. I'm going to save it as a TIFF file format because that has no compression. And then I can go back to manage mode and I can select both of my images, right click, and click on compare images. So this is really helpful when you are making edits and want to compare the original photo to your edit. Okay, what else can we do? I'm going to open this photo. I'm going to do in develop mode, and I'm going to do some minor adjustments. Just reducing the exposure, adding a bit more contrast. I'm also going to select my subject and make him pop a lot more by increasing his contrast and exposure just ever so slightly. So just by doing those edits, we can see how our subject becomes a lot more prominent in our photo. Maybe I will bring back some of the exposure. And there we have it. Let's open this photo again in edit mode. What's the other awesome thing you can do in edit mode besides basic edits like cropping and size and, you know, everything that you can have here on the filter menu to your left is the sky replacement. Because I'm pretty confident that we can find a better looking sky to make this image a bit more striking. So I'll click on sky replacement. Ultimate will analyze the image and will find the sky. And I already have, and also if you've never used sky replacement before, sky replacement comes with a bunch of skies that you can use in your photos. You got sunsets, storms, dramatic skies, night skies, and you can, of course, add custom skies just with this plus icon right here. But for now, we're just going to add this stormy clouds because it adds a lot more feeling to our photo. You can adjust the position of your sky, the scale of your sky, and one of the most important refinements is shift edging. So if I drag the shift edge slider to the left, you can see that the sky is retracting, and if I move it to the right, it's expanding. And in a lot of situations, you will see this sort of really faint white line between your new sky and your image. And so to fix that, all you have to do is shift the edge a little bit to the right. Not too much, just a little bit right there. To your sky, you can edit its brightness, its temperature, and its tint. So that's good for now. And an awesome thing that you can do, and this will take us into the next important aspect of edit mode, is layers. So in the bottom left, you have output as layers. And when you click done, you will see that your sky is a specific layer and that your original photo is a separate layer. So just to cover more in edit mode. And again, I can compare my images in manage mode by selecting them both and just seeing how the edits turned out. So as I was saying, edit mode has these pretty cool automatic selections as well, just as in edit mode. But the really nice thing about edit mode is that all of those selections can be layers that you can then affect separately. So definitely edit mode expands on the capabilities of develop mode. If you just want to make your subject pop, if you want to fix the lighting in your photos, then definitely develop mode is enough. And if you want to do more, then I suggest moving on to edit mode. So let's see what happens if I select my subject. Pretty interesting. Same as in develop mode, sometimes the AI will select things that you don't want in your photo. And all you have to do to get to fix those selections is to go up here and click on the brush selection. So if I right click, I am deselecting my car. And I'm also going to fix, and you can do this more precisely with patience. Also here, there, and now we have our subject selected. So, oh, and I think there's some space here too that shouldn't be selected. Okay, so one thing you can do is after you have your selection, go to your keyboard and do Control Copy, and then Control V, and you will have that same selection as a separate layer, just like this. I'm just going to discard that movement, and I can, for example, edit only that subject, just as I was doing in develop mode, by either increasing, like adding an effect layer that you can find on the bottom left, on the bottom right. And you can see that when I reduce the exposure, everything is being reduced, or if I increase the exposure, everything is being increased. So if you want to only affect that layer, all you have to do is click on this little rhomboid or square right here, and this will clip this effect layer only on to the layer that's below it. So another awesome thing of edit mode is that you can keep on selecting different things in your photo and have them all separate. So now comes into play the AI object selection, which is up here. And with the object selection, you can trace anything in your image and the AI will select it. Let's try this car. So that's a pretty cool way to, you know, incorporate more elements into your edits. Let's select this right here. And something interesting is that you can add more to your selection. So if I wanted to add the bottle, I can do that. If I wanted to remove from my selection, I can subtract. And if it isn't perfect, of course, you can always complete your selection with the brush tool. So you select the brush tool, just like that. I'm incorporating that. And if you're not seeing it in red, make sure you go to select and go to the overlay options. And in the overlay options, probably your selections might look like this with the marching ants sort of display, which I don't find really helpful. So just go to overlay options and click on selection highlighted. And that will mark your selection in red. That's a really important detail. So let's discard our edits in this image and go to people mode. So what you might see once you open people mode and you have not named anyone yet, you will see a message that says that you don't have any named faces. And all you have to do is go and click on unnamed, and you can start looking at all of the faces in your photos grouped by what ACDSee thinks are the same people, or in an ungrouped way where everyone is separated. So if I click on grouped, you can see that some images repeat itself, and this is gonna just get easier for the software as more information you give to it. So if I type here a name and click enter, then if I go to that name, Miranda, that I've just named, and I double click, I'll see all of the images with that name. And the cool thing is that people mode will suggest, and it's pretty amazing how accurate it is. It'll tell you, okay, are all these people Miranda? And I see someone here who isn't, so I'm just gonna click no. But it seems that every other face is correct, and so I'm just going to accept all of these suggestions. So you can train people mode doing this. This is Miranda? No, no. Is this Miranda? Yes. So now, if you go to manage mode and type her name, all of the photos that have her on the metadata that I've just added will appear on manage mode. And so, yeah, that's basically people mode. So I can add my own name here, Rodrigo. I'll go to my own view, and I will see if the suggestions that ACDSee is doing are correct, and it seems they're all correct. So I'm just going to confirm those suggestions, and now all of the photos with my face have incorporated that metadata. So if I go to quick search and type my name, I will see all of the photos that have my face on it. And with that, I think it's good for today. I know that there are a lot of questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't answer all of them, but just if you'd like to know more, or if there was something that you were not able to learn today, just send me a message on our photo film community, and I will happily answer. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good day.